Welcome back, Visions fans. This is episode 8 of the Leonis report. I know we were away for a week last week. I was on vacation, so thank you for bearing with us. But back with JB79, doing it again. Good evening, JB. How's it going?
Going great. Obviously, welcome back. Good to be back on the podcast this week. So, actually, a pretty stocked week in terms of kind of upgrades and things coming in the game. So excited to talk about it.
Absolutely. I mean, just from the Full Metal collab alone, there's been a bunch with the new characters and the shake up and the new Guild Wars map and new vision cards for all of them. And strike damage all of a sudden is a thing. And now we have the raid and lots. Yeah, so an
Yeah.
exciting time to be playing the game for certain. But yeah, on that topic, we'll kick off here with the Full Metal collab. We'll talk a little bit about Roy at this point, where I know he came out 2 weeks ago, but we finally got kind of our full week of arena usage with him as that bonus unit. Have you seen him around at all? Or I know you maxed reincarnated your Yuffie, so have you put him into the fire team at all, or is that not an option?
I pulled him. I was super excited for him. He's one of my favorite characters from the anime. So I went ham on him day one. Unfortunately I had to full pity him, or I shouldn't say not full pity. I went to 95%, which is
Close enough.
basically the same
Yeah.
thing. And yeah, so that really sucked. So I basically have been just slow building him. I didn't buy any shards at all. So he is 120 now, just because I have all the other units and I've been able to quickly build up mind spheres. Yeah, he's gonna stay there for a minute until I can build up the rest of him. I've played with him very lightly. I have faced off against some, like kind of in arena and free match and things like that. Haven't seen any in Guild Wars. Uh, the ones I've seen in arena, I don't know. It's an easy win. Um,
I'd agree. Yeah.
but like, yeah, I'm mainly just using Alphonse right now, and if he gets off that chain protection, his chaining doesn't really do much,
Right.
and so
No, totally agreed. Yeah, I've made it a point last week to build my own Roy team in Arena, and I did end up 140ing him. I had the shards. I kind of probably overextended myself to get the 120, and was probably a bad idea because I needed those 120 to max reincarnate Al and Bradley potentially. So I probably could have
yeah.
waited on the 140, but I don't know how to say this because I just put out my character review for Roy today. I gave him a B, which is like probably a little bit lower than most characters. But yeah, I really wanted to like try to get him to that 140 and stress test him in arena where yeah, sure people are building it for like, magic rest and stuff, but you're still seeing like enough variety of elements. Yeah, I think we both kind of hit him on the head for like what we should expect. He's honestly like a good unit, but just not blowing the doors off anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, the ones that I was facing off against, they weren't completely optimized or like basically how I would build it. It was more just kind of throwing them in there for bonus or whatever. So, I think that there is some potential there to be found. I really liked him actually in the fire versus fire matchup just because of how accurate he is, and
Yep.
if you happen to have pulled that fire resistance card that Keepers of the Crystal, which I did.
Me too.
And then you can even in my build, I threw in Hio's helmet in there for the fire resist. So
Absolutely.
I think that could be a really cool build. If you want to kind of hunt those fire evade teams. But aside from that, the survivability just isn't there to try to throw him against Sephiroth. I don't think that's gonna work out super well.
I agree. That was actually my biggest demerit against him was the survivability. On average, from what I can tell, he doesn't get one shot by things. He'll typically take a second hit, but he really doesn't have any means of survivability that many of the other units do. Let me like walk that back a little bit. He's only got one kind of survivability. It's that general barrier, right? Well, there's barrier break everywhere nowadays, so that might as well kind of be nothing. Where at least the other characters have like a barrier break and a courage or a life steal or a something, and they have like multiple ways to kind of make it through, and he just doesn't. He's like truly the glass cannon archetype because his magic stat does get exceptionally high. He's got the extra magic damage buff that like Summer Helena has, so he does pack a punch. But even then, like he's not nuking people like you see some of these other units like Dark Fina with that unit in peril or Skahal with just his the dog. It's like it's not nearly at those levels.
I wish that he did have flare because he really needs that barrier break, and then the non-elemental damage
Yep.
would have been awesome against or it would have been a lot better in the Sephiroth matchup, and I think it would have helped him out a little bit. I mean, he can throw out his LB and kind of have that pseudo barrier break with the 4 hits, but I mean, Sephiroth is walking in with 30%
Right.
fire resist or whatever, in
Yep.
most cases. So
I'm actually kind of surprised too that they didn't throw the flare in because although flare is an exceptionally good ability now, Roy's got nothing in his kit for cast time down. So I feel like there'd be a balanced thing where it's like, yeah, you give him the hyper single target non-elemental, but the trade-off is it takes freaking forever unless you actually like give him some cast time down, which kind of doesn't make sense given that all his other stuff is not cast time. So I feel like that's a balanced trade-off. It's kind of sad they didn't go that route.
agreed.
Yeah. Yeah. But I am obviously, intrigued by the Kefka introduction too, where sometimes it takes just that extra character, and Roy's got that spirit in peril where not a lot of characters can take advantage of that, but bringing Kefka maybe all of a sudden it can, and obviously like if you can throw those glove VCs for the two of them, that does a massive difference in potential damage output. So I'm still like kind of hoping for that, but I really have tempered expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some interesting builds that people are playing with in JP with the rain after his 140. Kind of has some meme builds where he can get over 100 area resist, which is insane.
Yep.
And then just throwing the two magic cannons behind him. So that seems like it could be a pretty fun team. Whether it's actually viable, like at the top end of the game, I'm not really sure about that yet, but seems like it will be fun to play with anyway.
Honestly, I have hopes that it is. Even when we do kind of our mock like theory crafting, we have high hopes for Hyo and Kefka's hate essentially buff. That Hyo, when he first released, that was one of the things that we thought might have kind of put him over the edge. Was that if he had some form of hate, he could be that pseudo tank, and now Kefka kind of gives him that opportunity. That yeah, with all the area res he has, even if the unit res is a way to like hurt him, he still has like the counter ability that can self heal, and there's some good stuff there.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
but yeah, even if Roy fits into that picture, who knows? That might end up being someone totally different. But yeah, yeah. Either way, we got the getting ahead of ourselves. Roy's going to be a huge character for the raid this week. I know people are already trying to build like soloable Roy builds, which I think they can theoretically, but just got to put it to the test.
Yeah, I mean, it's always a nice quality of life if you have the unit that can take it down easily like that and just kind of set it and forget it and, and let it go, because trying to like multi those raids and things from like back in the day was glad that it was locked down back then and we had the time to do it, but nowadays just
Yeah.
not going to work.
No, totally. I know it's still very viable that people do those multi rooms and you find duos and quads, but if you can set up a duo room for yourself, doesn't even have to be a solo. If you set up a duo, even that yields some like big efficiencies for how much currency you get for the time you spend and like all the button
Oh yeah,
clicking. Yeah. So
definitely.
yeah, and then most recently we had Bradley obviously come into the fold here, and he's been a super hype unit for like obviously a bunch of reasons. A, it's like a new Earth unit, so people are excited to kind of play with that new element they couldn't. They've obviously seen some great results in JP from what he can do. There's just a lot of reasons to like him. He's a cool character for anyone that's watched or read Full Metal. 100 cost as opposed to everyone else being 90. There's like a bunch of cool stuff. Did you pull him and build him?
I did pull him, and yeah, I had to go pretty deep on him as well. I had to go to 70, I think it was like 75%
Oh,
or so. So yeah, I've been having really rough pull luck lately, and that's kind of killed a lot of the hype. Thankfully, like I was able to buy a bunch of shards with like the pull currency, and obviously we had like the mind sphere pulls and things like that. So I do have him. I just was able to 120 him. I'm still kind of letting the chocobo shards collect before I take him to 140.
yeah.
I'm really trying to stretch my Vizio right now just because not only have the pulls been bad, but there's just been so many units and high cost vision cards and things that the cost is really getting a little bit out of whack. So trying to reel it in a little bit. So
I'm with you. I'm the same, and I fortunately have not had to go very deep on these units. I think Roy I got on the fourth pull, and Bradley might have been like the sixth. But to your point, I actually have been feeling the cost of the game, just given obviously like all the characters are pulling, and we've talked about this aside. But I'm like going really heavy in the full metal side of things to carry me for some of the future, and so I've actually used a lot of the Viz that I've bought to straight up buy the 40 shard packs that are in the regular shop, like the 2K Viz for 40, because I do have intentions to reincarnate them. I'm already tapped out in the Moogle Mind Sphere exchange. There's really no other way to get it, and although the Chocobo is awesome. I'm still getting tons, and barracks is cool. It's not enough to like reincarnate them at the rate that I want to reincarnate them. So yeah, I'm
Mhm.
spending the Viz deep. So I'm gonna be passing on a couple banners here for sure.
So the Mog stuff, the Mog metals, I've been trying to conserve my like stash of those as much as possible because at least on the JP side, when Dialdo was introduced, they lowered the prices significantly of the UR
Oh,
scrolls in there.
yep,
So obviously that's going to be like a good source for reincarnation in the future. So I'm trying to stretch those as far as I can at this point.
me too.
But yeah, I've seen a lot of people were going ham on Bradley. See, I saw a couple of them day one at 140 on the day he was released in Guild War.
Yep.
Saw him all over the place in free match. I've faced off a couple just playing manual and things like that. The hype was well warranted for him. I've seen him pull off some crazy combos with his CT up, and then he gets like the clutch reaction
Yep.
to kind of just chain off on you like crazy.
Yep.
Especially if he's got like haste going at the same time, the speed is pretty crazy. It's something that we've seen before, kind of with Perrine. Like she can kind of do pretty much the same thing.
Yep.
She has the haste on her LB, and she has some CT up mechanics too. But his damage, is it's definitely next level.
Yeah, phenomenal, really. And it's hard to quantify the 200 CT as well. Like we have a rough feel of it because obviously a lot of characters get 200 CT for a couple things, but he's got like four different ways that he can generate that 200 CT. It's hard to quantify the consistency of it, like how much that actually speeds him up, particularly because of how fast he already is. Like I just finished my character review for him, and he is like amongst some of the fastest that you can get in the game, regardless of the CT, regardless of the haste. So you start throwing that in there. I tried to find a way to like mathematically break it down, like how valuable that consistent 200 CT is, and it's honestly even hard to quantify, but you feel it. He is very fast.
And then, I mean, on top of that, you can think about maybe bringing in some other CT mechanics, like have a Keen Blader in there, or there's even Perrine's TMR, which you could have somebody buff onto him, and all of a sudden he's getting 30 or 35 CT per swing or whatever. So
Yep,
you can do some fun things with that for sure.
definitely. Yeah, he is a exceptionally good character. That I can say this now because by the time we upload it, the character review will be out. He's the first character I've ever given an S tier grade toward. Like he's that much better in my opinion. He's like Velas levels good, where the amount of penetration that he has, where if you have his limit break on, obviously it's only one fight, 100% slash res pen for those 3 turns. With his double hit AoE, that's 100 defense pen on that ability. And I was thinking about it, and I threw this in there, like, okay, so how else do you mitigate damage? It's AoE res, unit res, and then element res, right? Well, Immortals Azan's TMR is 50% Earth res pen. So go ahead and like stack your Earth res, and he can still even get you that way, right? Like,
Yeah.
there's multiple ways that he's got the barrier break. It's like almost there's just no weaknesses, and he's so self sufficient. I mean, you can talk about him forever. Definitely a
Yeah.
unit I'm trying to max reincarnate quickly.
I put him, in the same tier as Win Glashella.
Right there.
Um,
The only the thing for
he's
me, Glaciella doesn't have the penetrations, where we have found that Pierce res kind of just
yeah.
makes her do nothing, but he doesn't have that downside.
Yeah.
But I'm sorry.
Obviously,
Continue.
they're both like hyper accurate as well. He's got plus 30 to hit on a couple of his attacks. He's got the accuracy passive, good luck.
Yep.
I mean, I even played around with an evade build for him. It's not like top of the line, but it's good enough, especially with he's generally like decently bulky with good HP and things like that. The Immortal Spirit. Obviously, that's not as great as it used to be, but
Right.
it's still nice to have. You always like to see it, especially with reflex behind it. So
Totally. Well, the operative sub job has the evasion buff. So if you are trying to run in with that evasion team, there's not many Earth units that actually give that 25 evasion. I think Bunny Resnick does, but
hmm,
your
true.
typical evade Earth units like Zazan and Ikitone don't have that kind of internal evade buff that many other characters get. So if he can kind of subterfuge the two of them, and then all of a sudden he's got 25, like in a hyper evade meta, he'll probably get hit out of everyone, but against those lower accuracy like tank units or people that don't have guaranteed it, yeah, like he'll actually dodge a fair amount of stuff.
No, it's kind of interesting, like how Earth's evade niche is kind of the more bulky, kind of survivable, rather than kind of doing it with like the null sure hit. Like
Right.
they haven't given that to Earth quite yet. I thought maybe we might see it on with Zazan when they gave him the global upgrade, but yeah, that's just kind of what kind of the lane that they've chosen for that, and I think that's kind of cool too.
No, I'm a fan for sure, and it is cool to see Bradley come in this quickly. Where obviously we're hyped. I'm actually sure most people could do that because they probably hadn't built an Earth unit in like 8 months, so they probably had like this backload of like Earth Awakening prisms and Earth Fragments of Thought, and they were just waiting for another Earth unit. Because I know Rugia was not a strong pull, and Bunny Resnick was even kind of a like tapered, like we're saving for third anniversary, like let's not waste. So yeah, and last Earth unit people probably went hard for like. I couldn't even tell you. I don't even know.
Yeah, Rugi is looking a lot better right now, though. Like next to Bradley, somebody in my guild is running a team of Bradley, Rugia, and Queen Macherie, and 6-starring against Dark, against whoever every day. So that's actually performing even better than I expected, to be honest.
Definitely. I'm definitely high on Rugia in concept. I think there's a lot of good things about him. I think his release early didn't like came at a weird time, but as Earth continues to get stronger here, I do think he's going to be a very good piece of what they do. Just what he does for evasion down, AoEs, and what he does for the AoE regen. That's like one of my favorite buffs, quite honestly, and gives him the range. There's just so much like the follow up extra attack now, which actually does counter Skahal's courage, which is really great because prior to that, even Earth had a tough time shutting down Skahal Lightning, and Rugia is like an exceptionally good counter just to have that secondary hit. So there's a lot to like for Rugia. He's just not a popular pick, and yeah, it's tough to build him too reincarnate wise. I'm struggling even with Perrine as we were talking about because the Warriors of the Crystals aren't featured on any like those pull tickets where you can like select shards or anything, right?
Yeah.
So the only way to get them is when they either rerun those banners, maybe get some shards, or if you're just like barracksing them and you're hard questing and you're like doing the attempt reset to get extra. It's tough, but Earth is looking pretty good for the foreseeable future.
That's what I do. I do the hard quest for like the newer warriors every day, and then the weekly elemental shop that like the Earth shop will have his shards in there too. So that's kind of another 5 per week you can grab.
I did not. I honestly kind of forgot about that. I'm glad you mentioned it. I have not looked for that, and I will now. Yeah.
Yep.
Good recommendation. All right, cool. So, along with Bradley, there is a vision card coming out here where he is eligible to use it. So, the new vision card, this is again your graphic, my absolute favorite. Ties of the Bonds of Brotherhood. This is one of the vision cards that gets dropped as part of the raid with that secondary rare boss. This is another exceptionally strong vision card, not only for the strike units where it's most popularly touted, where obviously we've seen already what they can do for vision cards. Just very briefly, the stats obviously can read them, but the 50% attack, the crit damage, the crit rate, there's some agility on here as well. There's a lot of really good things that in the context of even King Bradley, there's a fair amount of Earth units here, which are still viable. Obviously, Queen Macherie comes to the forefront of the mind, but Urel I've seen being used to counter some lightning and some top-end stuff still. And Noctis has aged pretty well, in my opinion, also, and obviously Bradley fitting into these other teams too. But this is a great vision card.
And it's amazing that we get this one completely for free from the raid. So everybody that's watching this, make sure you get in there, grind the raid, get the card, get the free shards, build this up. You'll be kicking yourself, after this is gone, and if you didn't happen to complete it. But I mean, this is a card I would have pulled for, like the offensive power, really, really good. Obviously, like you said, it's heavily kind of Earth centric there in terms of like pure elements, but a lot of good units. Obviously, the Fist team is one I think that a lot of people are excited to kind of throw this in. You get Perrine, Alphonse, and Edward. I think it's going to be super, super good for them.
Absolutely. And even that's obviously the de facto, but there's a lot of people that, even if you don't have those units, talk about Tifa, certainly serviceable. Snow is certainly serviceable. Urella has a time and place, definitely pulled less. Queen, we've had some fun hopes for what she does in strike and magic and healing. And then you throw like X factors in here, like Sadali, who can give that re-raise and hate. You had a bunch of, interesting potential, like, I don't know, one-off characters that you might be able to throw in, like say a Raph or a Snow. There's just so much to like about this card.
Actually, have you played around with Lisette at all since all these strike support has come into the game?
Not since the new strike support, but I did use her for a cost limited thing way back. I don't know, months ago. But no, have you played with her with the strike cards?
So I mean, just I've been doing like a manual tournament all based around MRs, and I kind of was playing around with her a bit, and she puts out some crazy damage with all these new cards that have come in. So definitely kind of like maybe a sleeper, interesting pick for limited stuff.
I don't doubt it. I mean, nowadays it seems that for limited related things, the newer lower rarity units are
Right.
like disproportionately strong. We've seen Halloween Lucia and Winter Revies and even the 50 cost units. Those are the 70 cost units, like 50 cost units that have come out have been really good. And I know just like mentioning a couple off the top of my head. Yeah, Lisette, you just mentioned McLeod, Ravelka, Renell, Cyrell. Like that's really kind of it. It's really those fives. But even Cryes has had some great dream upgrades from what I can tell. I haven't used her yet, but she looks really good. Liveal this week is getting her dream. So there's a fair amount of units that were introduced, and Lisette is one of them that, yeah, definitely looking forward to throwing in with this card. Just given the other, let's say, mono lightning synergies too. You had slime there
Yeah,
at 20 cost, right? Like you get creative with what you do.
he goes anywhere.
I love slime, so good. So that essentially wraps up what we want to do for the full metal discussion. But this week we got the news that Wing Sterne is coming into the fold of things. Brand new light unit. I know he was very highly looking forward to because there was a deal in JP of I think it was half scroll cost to reincarnate. From what I can tell, though, we're not getting that same benefit. Yeah,
Yeah, I was kind of looking for that in the news. I kind of combed over everything they said. I didn't see any trace of it. It doesn't mean that it's not coming. If it doesn't come, I'm actually kind of glad about it because that would kind of entice me to go in there when I don't really want to
yes.
because I really need to skip him.
Yep. No, me too. Me too. We've talked about some of his limitations. He's got a lot in common with Resol in terms of some of their offensive deficiencies, and then just talking like straight balance of the game. I don't think he's enough to really tilt the scales to make light terribly competitive with dark. Dark is just that oppressive already. We have had some questions about Sylvie and what she can do to kind of influencing things, but I still have tempered expectations for what she can do just because light seems still really reliant on like re-raise and I don't know a
Yeah.
couple weird things,
I,
but
I think that Gumi really tipped the scales in Dark's favor with Dwayne and his new vision card. That's, I mean, Dark definitely kind of at this point in JP was a little bit falling off with the
yep.
strike meta coming in, and then obviously Stern coming in, and a lot of people kind of going ham on him. Miranda comes in not too long after. So Dark kind of went quiet here for a little bit in JP. That doesn't seem like it's going to happen at all for us. I think Dwayne cemented that Dark is pretty much here to stay for for the foreseeable future, and
Yep.
it's only going to get better in the future when Raph comes.
Absolutely. Well, and obviously you have to talk about different like parts of the game too, where like let's say like top 10 is different than the general player base. And obviously we'll see in a second. We're gonna do the meta review, but Sephiroth is still absolutely everywhere, and everyone already has Dwayne for the most part, right? So like it wasn't a big lift for people to max him. They already have him, so have to pull that vision card. Dark is a way more economical investment for most people than it is to all of a sudden now have to go get Wing Stern and Max reincarnate him just to like maybe compete with Light. Then you also have to have Sylvie, which I think most people probably pulled for her, but still, you know what I mean? It's a little more complex in making that work. So, yeah, I mean, I know Bart's in the future does add something where Bart's and Stern seem to be the guys to use, but even then, I don't know if it's making like a big enough splash to warrant the cost given what we've already spent recently.
I think with Stern too, like his best builds really do require Dark Bahamut to have that equipped to get the additional 10 area resist as a
Yep.
bestowed.
Yep.
And obviously you're probably going to want maybe Wall in there too, and have some like the Final Fantasy 14 Dark Resist card. And you can definitely, I think he's going to be good. Like he you can definitely build him to beat Dark. He has a great like non-elemental attack too with a barrier break that can really do some damage against Sephiroth. On the other hand, Sephiroth can just come in and dispel his re-raise. So that is that's a big concern for him too.
Totally, absolutely. And well, and to the point of Dark Bahamut too, the thing that to your point makes it more of a preference is that it's an attack oriented card. Right now the AoE res for light is on the Jaden vision card, and Jaden's actually still very potent and viable. So I'm that's not a demerit against that vision card, but having the AoE res for light on a offensive oriented vision card with all the attack stat it has certainly allows you to like min max things differently. So yeah, that's an expensive pull though, just to get an attack-oriented AOE vision card. That's yeah, it's a great vision card, honestly. But you got to pick and choose.
Yeah,
And
it's
and and
expensive.
and Dwayne's vision card tipped the scales opposite its favor. The fact that you can now run dark with that AoE res on Dwayne's physical oriented card instead of the Garvel card, which is the only other
Huge.
option, huge, because now you don't need
Yeah.
Dark Bahamut to get that dark AoE res. So big difference.
Especially in the dark party when if you're only running one magic person in the party, you want them to be main slotting the Black Rose card for
Exactly.
the agility. So
Absolutely 10 billion%.
huge for the synergy of that team.
Yep, for sure, for sure. Well, good. Well, I know we'll probably talk more about him in the next week when he drops. We'll have videos. I know you've already done a pre look at him, but in addition to that, we also have a slew of new unit Dream or Transcendence Awakenings, as well as a couple MA2s coming into the fold as well. Just listing off the total list of them is Gilgamesh, Jaden, Velric, Eliza, Chunak for the URs. We also have Marielle, Renal, and Leviel for the MRs, and then Engelbert and Kadia are getting some MA2s. So I know we kind of looked through a couple of them here. Between that list, anything that really pops out between Gilgamesh or Jaden or Eliza or anybody?
So Jaden, I'm a fan. He recently, or I mean not super recently, but he got his MA2 not that long ago, and obviously Sephiroth has been all over the game, and people are looking for solutions against him. I think that if you can build up some dark resistance and have kind of a stout tank in front of Jaden, he can bring the damage. Like he's getting something to address his AP issues. Like he's always been a unit that doesn't start with a ton of AP to begin with. So he's getting 15 initial AP. So he can so usually Big Jaden will have enough time to maybe get off one buff in an auto fight.
Yep.
So now, like with his acquired AP, he's going to have enough to be able to string off several attacks in a row. So that's super good. He does get some AoE resistance, which I think in general, that should allow him to maybe take one hit before he dies. And then he's getting an upgrade to his job 25, which is going to turn it into a magic barrier break. So I think that's his Magic Blast Plus, I think, or
Yes.
if I remember correctly.
But
But
Magic Grenade or Golden, yeah,
or,
Golden Shot.
Golden Magic Shot. Okay.
Yeah.
But that one is one of his arcing shots. So he already had a barrier break today on his limit burst, but it's like one of his straight line gun shots. So it was a little bit awkward to use in some scenarios. So him having now an arcing barrier break is really nice for him. He does have Black Mage too, which gives him another barrier break with Flare.
Yep.
So he's all about the barrier breaks now. So that's kind of interesting. Yeah, what do you think?
No, I'm in agreement. The magic barrier on the limit break is only 4 squares away, whereas that golden magic shot has that range of 5, if not more, because of the range height. So that's a superb, different way to cut or skin the cat, if you will. I don't know if flare is probably still popular. I probably would think that jamming thrust is the go-to still for most people, just because of the extra range it has, the insta cast. He doesn't have any cast time down, so flare takes a little bit longer. And then I know Red Mage has the curative abilities on there too, which people like to lean into. But shoot, not a bad thing to have flare. That's certainly a nice thing for him. Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah,
I still think the way to get to him is he's not going to be able to really hit Yuffie. So I mean, if you do happen to run into Jaden's, maybe that is one way you can get to him.
definitely.
But yeah.
Yeah, the null sure hit in particular, because he does at least have the guaranteed hit. I don't think it's potent enough to ever really kill anybody, but like every little bit helps. But yeah, if you can null that guaranteed hit, certainly cuts that out.
And then Gilgamesh is another 100 cost, the classic 100 cost. Gilgamesh, he is getting some pretty interesting upgrades. He's got basically it's kind of centered around the debuff resistance. So basically, he's getting 100% for attack type, element resistance, and then defense and spirit. So any of sort of the classic breaks and imperils aren't going to impact him at all. So that's a really nice defensive upgrade. He is finally getting his defense pen of 20, which he's never had any. So that's obviously it's not competitive. It's not at the 40 level that you'd like to see, but it's 20 is better than 0. That's for sure.
Definitely.
And then he is getting an upgrade to Kotetsu, and it's a pretty significant one. That's always, obviously that's been his diamond AoE slash imperil. It's the modifier is going from a small to a medium. It's getting a 30% hit chance, And then also the targeting radius is getting upgraded from, rather than just a straight line, he can now go diagonal with it. So I think it's a pretty significant upgrade for him, actually.
I would completely agree. Where, we've obviously played with him enough. Kotetsu is kind of the only thing he does really well. I know most other abilities we tend to disable because they scale off magic or something weird, or, it's just not his primary source of damage. But to get that extra, hit chance in there, the flexibility, the extra mod increase, and then he has always been kind of a squishier character by and large. And one of my favorite ways to mitigate many kinds of damage are just to flat out reduce or eliminate those imperils, which when you think about characters that can throw that 38% imperil or the 25% slash res down or something, if he can, get rid of that entirely, that's a big way for him to continue to survive. So still probably has some limitations, but overall, I think that really addresses a lot of his weaknesses while also enhancing things he does well. It's kind of a nice double whammy that not all characters get. They usually get something to either make them better what they already do, or they're like, someone like Eileen, where you're like catching up for a wicked bad weakness and agility. He's kind of getting the best of both.
I'm still waiting for Gumi to finally fix this guy's limit burst. It's one of the most awesome limit burst animations in the game, and it's just so bad. Like 69 AP for this garbage magic attack that doesn't do any damage.
Yep.
And it's only got the 30% chance to slow. Like,
Yep.
come on. Even
Bad.
it's embarrassingly bad. Like, I don't know why they haven't fixed it yet.
Absolutely. And I've tried to build him for hybrid like in the past to say like, can you increase both magic and attack, and to some degree where you can use both, and there's just no good way to actually end up getting it to a place where you can be that true hybrid unit. So yeah, like kind of a Kotetsu one trick, unfortunately.
Yeah.
So next we're also getting Eliza, who does not have her mastery ability yet in global, but her dream ability is an extra 15 missile attack res pen, which is very interesting because they were already pretty good at that, quite honestly. They also have the vision card help as well, so that's definitely a nice little damage boost for her. She's also getting the 50% reaction block rate. I think that's obviously really good for someone like her, where she does have a lot of abilities that you either land them, and if you don't, and characters can close the gap quickly, that's where she kind of gets into some trouble. She's the kind of unit that can be one shot by a fair amount of things, so being able to really, ensure that people aren't either reflexing or dodging or who knows what reason, I think is somewhat valuable. And then her ability that they're upgrading is her actual one of her main passives. It's the range 2. They're giving her a decreased AP consumption of 20. So you love to see that in those archers. I know it's like CTIA that kind of went that same idea with the AP help to kind of allow them to, just have that longer damage uptime. Overall, I don't think she needs a ton of tweaks, but if I had to pick a couple, like these actually aren't bad ones. These are some decent ones to keep her competitive with where a lot of characters are.
Yeah, the reaction block, I like it as well because her party buff also gives her 50 reaction blocks. So if she just ignores that completely.
Yep.
And yeah, I do like the AP consumption decrease because she definitely has some expensive skills in there, so like in the mid 30s for a couple of them. So nice quality of life upgrades there for sure.
Definitely. I know frequently she's built as a Zizabel's candidate. She's one of those characters where like you just kind of need it, and this not necessarily eliminates it, but certainly helps.
Definitely. I was going to say Chunak is coming in as well with his mastery 2. I think that he is another good candidate for fire hunting with his upgrades. His dream ability itself is not like super incredible. It's kind of focusing him maybe more in the crit potential area. But then he is getting an upgrade to his self buff, which allows him to ignore sure hits for 3 turns. So just like Yuffie, he's not quite as evasive as her. He's not really on the same level, but he's not too far off. Like he can get pretty up there. And Water does have 2 35% luck cards if you were able to grab them. So could be kind of a nice evasive evade hunter, I think.
He's definitely one of the units that I have like the most secret hope for, but I just I've seen it come close but never been perfect. But you're right, for a character that stacks as much luck as he does because of those 2 35%, but he also have I think it's the 18% luck vision card as well, where you can kind of get a little flexible. I know Duelist is one of my favorite jobs, like theory crafting wise. I've just never allowed it to actually like work. It's almost the kind of class where there's like too many buffs to be really good. There's a lot of teammate buffs, so it's, you gotta like pick one and then you just stick with it and hope that the AI works properly. But the crit rate and crit damage definitely leans into that duelist nature, and I know water has some extra crit rate and crit damage like emphasis. So yeah, I mean his buff overall I think is exceptional. It's that evade rate 20, unit res at 20, ignore sure hit, and then increase defense and spirit by 30 forever until you get hit twice. So yeah, like he's a great unit all around for a lot of different reasons. You know, just hasn't seen auto PvP usage, but I'm like a secret hope for him. I'm rooting for him.
Yeah, same here.
I know briefly we're talking about Marielle, where light unit, very famously used in limited guild wars for a lot of good reasons. Exceptionally good magic tank, where she was one of the first, like early on, to have that chance of being targeted of 5. What they're giving her is an additional 10 AoE res, which is great. Most tanks have, you know, multiple forms of that. She needed a little bit extra. She already had it on the MA2, but really bulking her up here now. They gave her some crit evasion, which I like. That's one of those like secret stats that not everyone gets visibility to, but for tanks in particular, you can reduce the extra like burst damage that adds up over time. And then the thing that they're upgrading is her passive, her main passive, that they've continued to upgrade, and they've given her another 5 like chance of being targeted, another 5 hate, bumping her up to 10 total, which, you know, this day and age is very powerful for a variety of tanks, where it's the kind of hate that you just literally can't get around. They take 5 hits at minimum. You must do it. There's just no way to get around it. So very, very powerful.
I like that too, because now she really isn't forced to go into Spellblade for taunting spell to kind of try to eke out some more hate.
Yep.
You can just, you know, sit on the 10 undispellable hate, and then bring in arithmetician, which, you know, there's some nice skills in there, you know, not only maybe for some clutch healing, like maybe in between strikes, but she's also got that level 3 disable, which, you know, she can try to throw that against evade units if,
Yep.
you know, if you're trying to go up against an evade team or somebody's trying to hit you with evade. So yeah, a lot to like with this upgrade. I think this is one I've been kind of saving some MR scrolls for. I'm definitely going to reincarnate her a bit.
Yeah, really good candidate to do so. On the light unit note, Engelbert is years later. I know he's a slow unit. He's like actually slow to the party though, getting an MA2 here.
Yeah, this is crazy. Like 3+ years into the game, he's finally getting that 10% HP and light attack for the party.
Yep. So yeah, 10% HP, 15 light attack. He's retaining the 15 defense, but he's also getting 10 AoE res, which we just mentioned. You know, kind of a must for modern tanks. And finally, getting the chance of being targeted of 5. He's like one of the only tanks left in the game that does not have that ability. Innately, he required that buff to do so. But obviously, there's a lot of good things to like. I know one thing that a lot of people are looking forward to were the monk upgrades here, where previously when you talk about, you know, Engelbert self-sustaining, it was really through the revenge ability, the 120 ability.
Revenge drain.
Yeah, revenge drain, where he would absorb damage done, but he doesn't have a lot of damage impact. So there was like only like a, you know, muted amount, and particularly as health pools get as enormous as they are now, it doesn't replenish nearly enough. But the monk's chakra ability to have that HP restore of just flat 40%, in addition to the HP regen, completely changes his bulkiness and survivability as a tank. Then again, healing power down. See you later, but definitely good upgrades for him.
Yeah, and the other kind of interesting thing about, I mean, at least on the JP side, he, you know, as sort of this strike, you know, meta strike teams were running around, he's actually a very good unit kind of to counter against that, just because he's always had that really nice base strike resistance at 25%.
Yep.
And then light is one of the few elements in the game that actually had a card for strike resistance, which was Leonis card. So, I mean, just with that one card, he's already got 45%.
Yep.
There's really not any strike resist penetration in the game. So, you know, you can throw an Esper on him, like Phoenix, for example, and get a bunch of strike resistance. And he can get to a point where he can be close to nullifying it, if not nullifying it altogether.
Absolutely. Particularly when you think about those strike teams, they typically are very skewed toward physical damage only. So they don't have that magic damage to like keep him in check at all. So they really just run up against a brick wall and really can't do anything.
For sure. There is, I think, one upgrade that we missed for him, which was, I think his barrier skill also gets an upgrade. It goes to a 70% potency instead of 50%. So that's kind of cool too.
That's correct. Yeah, I mean, obviously I have like, tempered expectations for barriers because they get so easily broken.
Yeah.
But yeah, 70% physical damage reduction. That's one of those things that like maybe sure at the top end of the game doesn't make a big impact, but for the rest of everyone that's not building all these new units, the barrier break options. I mean, 70% barrier, and you can't break that. With the team that you're running, forget about it. He's never dying.
I do want to give a quick shout out before we move on to Kadia, who that's a unit I've been waiting for this mastery to for a really long time. I'm a big fan of what they did for the unit. But she finally gets some cast time reduction at 400, which is huge for her. She gets an innate she gets the innate Emerald Echo there to like increase her buffs and debuffs. She gets the innate chance to not be targeted by 3 at the beginning of battle too, which I like that as well. She has some really good tech in some of her skills, which her Veil skill is actually already upgraded where she actually kind of has this specialist against both Earth and Dark, which is actually very interesting for the meta that we're kind of evolving into with Bradley and Sephiroth kind of being at the top of the meta at the moment. So I think that you could build some really interesting teams around this ability and kind of use that against some of those top teams.
Straight up, I've never given her a second look, if only because I've like obviously skewed toward different cost characters for Wind, but you make an excellent point here on the Earth and Dark res, and the thing that caught my eye even is the 100% defense debuff res here. One of my favorite things about Bradley in particular is that on his defense break, if you get your defense broken, it's also a dispel, everything. Dispel buffs, dispel haste. It's also healing power down of 70. Exceptionally strong, only if you get your defense broken though. By casting this, he can't do that. So none of that applies. That is that second upgrade there with the debuff resistance and protect, that is part of her dream upgrade, which we'll get a little bit later. But I think so that's when she really gets super good. But even just now, if you're trying to like build up resistances, 35% on Dark or Earth, like that's really good for me. I would agree. And just looking at this, I think this AoE is bigger than what most green mages get for their buff range, right? Like Mashri is just a simple cross, isn't it?
Correct. For the Veil skill,
yeah.
This is like a souped up Veil skill.
Yeah, honestly, I wish all of them were like this. That's one of my biggest, downsides of the green mage. There's so many good abilities, but if you have to cast a Veil skill twice to make sure that everyone gets in it, that's a big waste of turn. This very forgiving AoE though, I am after going to seriously give Kadia a closer look than I have in the past.
Yeah, I think a lot of people should. I mean, especially because she has the Calamity Guard too, that has the barrier attached to it now. Post cleric upgrades.
Good point.
For me, I think cleric was one of the best, best winners out of all of the old jobs. In terms of their upgrades. So
absolutely. Well, good stuff. All right. Well, that concludes everything for the unit awakenings and MA2s as well. I know we have a couple things to talk about equipment-wise. We are getting a +6 on the Brigandine, which is one of the best pieces of equipment in the game just because of the AoE resistance that it's able to give you. But what they're getting in addition to that is 15% HP. So that's kind of alleviating the 10% HP that you need from your Truststone passive. This is kind of similar to some of the other armors that we've gotten. But one of the very intriguing things that I kind of hadn't realized is that the biggest buff is for the vital build here, in my opinion.
Huge.
Translate. I built this multiple copies for the shield build, where initially it was that 20 defense. Obviously, that seemed like the way to go, but from what I can tell, with all of these +6 upgrades, they tend to over exaggerate the enhancement to the stat that it was like intended for. If you know what I mean, where a lot of times if a thing was made to be high defense, the defense stat's the one that gets improved the most. That's not the case here. The defense only goes from 20 to 22, but the HP goes from 872 to 1221. In addition to obviously the extra 5% that you get here, that's I don't want to say exceptional, not overrate this, but like that's a pretty chunky amount of HP.
I mean, all of the builds have quite a bit of HP, but yeah, I mean, it really pops off when you see over 1200 on one piece, especially when you have the increased passive there on top of it.
Yep.
This has always been one of my favorite plate armors in the game. It really saddens me that Alphonse can't wear it, so that's a big bummer. But there's plenty of other tanks out there that can. One of my favorite combos is Brigandine plus Pod
Oh yeah.
to get the unit and the area resistance at once. I know at least like for me, I would always make a trust stone with HP and luck on one stone.
Always.
So not that long ago, I started making some like with crit evade instead of the HP, just kind of in preparation for this item. So
Yep.
if you have some extra stones that you can do that instead.
Yeah, that's always my go-to. The three universal ones, in my opinion, were always HP, luck, and crit evade. And I always thought the crit evade was like the third best priority. It's still really good, but it just kind of falls off comparatively in how universally, like, I don't know, impactful it can be. But yeah, you're right. I think that's a like excellent suggestion to go luck and crit evade instead, for certain, particularly for tanks. I mean, who doesn't want that?
I think I'm gonna be. I also went for two shield builds on this one. I think I might dismantle one and build a vital one. I kind of am liking that 1200 HP.
Well, and the first thing that came to mind was oftentimes you get into problems where, you have an item that has HP on it and the second highest item gets cut in half, right? So people most often go for HP trust stones. And while that does significantly bump up your HP, I feel like this alleviates the need to go as high on the HP set. You can kind of dabble in those defense and spirit sets where you may not have formerly, because this just gives you so much extra HP that, like, you don't have to worry about anything else getting cut in half on the HP trust stones.
Yeah, maybe we're gonna be seeing some 18 or 19k HP Engelberts out there.
It's
who's
possible.
who's gonna be crazy enough to reincarnate that guy? I want to see it.
Yeah, not me, but
Not me.
someone. I mean, shoot. And then the other one, this actually is a really important one to talk about. So as part of the raid this week, we're getting the Xiaomei plush toy, which is a character in Full Metal, a very cute panda that follows everyone around. Obviously getting both the shield and barrier options here. This is, again, one of those raid items which is kind of tailor-made for the collaborative units. We saw this with 13, kind of the same idea. This is a really good one. I mean, dark and light res of 10% for anyone, regardless of Full Metal, is a nice improvement. It does kind of overlap a little bit. I know like Magistral Rod for many of those staff units has that as well. You've also seen some, 10% like Hope Scarf, but having both on there is certainly nice. And for the Full Metal units, the initial AP of 15, I think, is very strong, because that's the kind of AP you get right at the start of the battle. It's not your max AP. It's literally free 15 AP.
Yeah, that's great. I like kind of this item kind of combined with the accessories that the Elric's brothers came with. It kind of has you thinking about maybe looking towards some weapon TMRs maybe for them that could be interesting. I know that so far on Alphonse I've liked to use Lamiga's TMR, so
Absolutely.
Could allow you to open up a slot and use something like this.
On every strike team I make, it's definitely the Megas team, or at least on one of them. Yeah, it's just too good of a synergy. The 20 accuracy, and yeah, to your point, they have enough modifiers and whatnot on their regular items that, yeah, you're not losing a lot of damage, but you're getting a lot of other potential utility here.
And I use that Hope Scarf from 13 all the time just for the dark resistance. So it'd be nice to have another piece here to kind of use up against those anti-dark teams for sure.
Absolutely.
And then in the future when light kind of ascends back up there, you can use this piece then.
Definitely, for certain. Good. All right. Well, that essentially concludes everything we were going to talk about for the battlegrounds. We are going to segue now to the war room, which is a little more about map analysis, some meta snapshots. We're looking at PvP results. We did get a brand new Guild War map this week, and this new Guild War map, Wastelands 2, is new, at least to us, for PvP. A very long map here, where I think it's, 14 squares long. That tends to be like just enough range for a lot of different teams to get a variety of buffs off. There is some wonky terrain where you can't traverse through the middle. You can either go left side or right side. There's some interesting things going on here. Do you like this map? Have you played around with this much?
Yeah, I mean we've had it for it's been almost a week now in Guild War. The middle area there I think can be kind of frustrating at times, depending on the team that you're using, where they kind of at first they'll kind of go down the middle, but then they need to like cut over to either the left or right, depending on where the hate is dictating them. So it can kind of make for some interesting pathing sometimes. But I'm still kind of rolling with my Fire of A team, and it's still trucking along, still doing really well on this map for me.
Yeah, same here. I've been using a lot of lightning primarily because I max reincarnated my Alphonse, so I've been trying to get most bang for my buck using him. And yeah, this is a great map. I love everything about it because, number one, there is enough flat terrain in the middle that you can still kind of like Zerg rush forward if you wanted to. That, you know, like you said, there's still some pathing problems, but overall, like it's not impossible to do that. I think it's really interesting what they did with the starting slots, the spacing, where one of them is only 2 slots away, the other one is 3. The reason why I love this on the bottom is that when you look at units like either Alaya or a bow tie unit or rule gear characters that have 2 movement, they typically can't get that teammate buff off if they're 3 squares away. This completely eradicates that problem. So you have a lot more options with bow tie units or units like that. And then just in general, the fact that the map is different both on, you're seeing like the top half compared to the bottom half, where the top half has these like random height 4 squares that I've had some fights where, you know, I've put my tank in slot 1 to kind of bring the fight up here, and it's actually kind of difficult sometimes, where not only do you have that like weird height difference of 2 sometimes depending on where they're standing, but you have like a really hard choke point here where you can't walk between 2 of these spots, so things get really weird on the
Yeah.
top side of this map. But overall, yeah, the range, like there's a lot of good stuff that works. It's a great map.
I think I was planning on when Jaden gets his upgrade on Wednesday to test out some teams with him then. So yeah, it's interesting that you bring up that spacing there, because that's exactly what I was thinking about too.
Yep, definitely.
But I was thinking like kind of, you know, when you bring him into the middle, he has the arcing shot, so he can shoot over that obstacle there in the middle, and he can be kind of safely there in the back and kind of pick off some units. So might not be a bad thing to try out.
No, and particularly nowadays where, you know, missile is kind of taking a back step, that people aren't so harshly gearing for it. If they are, it's not typically light res associated with it. It's usually like ice res or lightning or something more missile oriented. So Jaden also has that nice niche that it's also spirit scaling, where we're in a super heavy physical meta. He just kind of has that right niche that when people aren't gearing for it, he will absolutely blast you. Just because you're not looking for light, you're not looking for missile res, you're not looking for spirit scaling stuff.
I think the other thing with the dark teams, that's, at least I know in my bracket area, a lot of the dark teams out there are defending with Demon Wall, because they're really kind of going hard against anti-dark.
Yep.
Or they're kind of really building up their accuracy as well. People have kind of put away their Diabolos and kind of putting away a bit their light resistance and focusing more against dark and fire. So, you know, if I don't think that I think you can get away without having like necessarily a light in peril and have him still do damage.
Yep, definitely. I mean, I know Engelbert's getting that MA2. I don't necessarily think he gets the nod yet over Warrior of Light, who still seems to do very well against Dark. Like he's kind of just like a statue, for better or worse,
Yeah.
that, you know, Dark has a tough time potentially taking down. But yeah, interesting to see what happens there.
Looking forward to it.
Definitely. On that note, we are going to look at what we, you know, call some of our meta snapshots, where we're talking about hypotheticals, but we can actually see so far what people have been doing. We have WOTV Stats, like my absolute favorite website ever created, I guess second to WOTV Calc, which is still the king of all kings of websites. But WOTV Stats is really, really insightful. That yeah, we will end up taking a live look here, kind of filtering on what we're seeing for meta implications across a variety of different rankings. I know we'll probably do top 10, top 25, top 50, and then top 100. And then if we are specifically looking at the last 4 days or so, because this only tracks regular Guild War, does not include the limited cost Guild Wars. Really interesting to see what ends up shaking out here. And so what we're seeing on the screen are attack teams being used in the top 10 here. Obviously, seeing a lot of fire uptick, a lot of lightning, a little more of ice as of late, which I think is kind of interesting given that fire's also seeing a similar uptick, but this is a map that caters to them. And obviously with Bradley's release, they're seeing Earth kind of come into the fold here, and the map effect benefits them. So yeah, some cool stuff to see.
Yeah, very, very interesting that we're not really seeing any purple lines show up here in this one.
No, Dark has a tough time. And it's hard to describe exactly why. It's just that I think they don't fare as well on some of these longer maps. They really do kind of want to get in your face quickly, kill you before you can get too many buffs off. The trajectory or the traverseness of like the heights, not all the Dark units have troubles with. You know, it's really just height 2, so it's not a huge hurdle. I know Night of Ruin Sterne has no problem with that, but yeah, overall, just Dark doesn't seem to fare as well. I think it's really more because of the tanks that people are using too, where you look at like Snow and Alphonse and King Mont, and they kind of are the best ones to go toe to toe with Sephiroth. But yeah, it is intriguing to see top 10 no purple at all.
I think it's going to be a different story when we look at the rest of the brackets.
I would completely agree. At least on defense, we are still seeing dark walls. They are still some of the most consistent, but they are beatable, which is why you're not seeing that on attack, where you're getting some more offensive variety. And yeah, on defense, Lightning has been king. There's still a fair amount of fire evade, but even in that matchup, I think Lightning tends to win against most forms of fire evasion. Lightning on this map is just exceptionally good with Skahal and Alphonse. Like there's, I don't know, I don't know what I can say about it.
I think within the top 10, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but I mean, I think that you guys are putting in a lot of effort to essentially, come up with solutions for that dark team. And, pretty much, by the time that everybody's running them, you guys are ready to have a counter in there right away. So it allows people to not get away with just kind of throwing in that same lineup each and every day. And you have to be a little fluid with it.
That's absolutely true. We are always trying to stay ahead of the curve. A lot of people rely on Sephiroth to get that courage and re-raise move, and we don't really have that problem because you try to find ways to either get consecutive turns or secondary hits, or who knows what. There's more than one ways to solve that problem. And characters like Dark Lucio, we're talking earlier about the amount of barrier break that exists. Like she's just kind of like not as big of an issue for us. We can easily put Toad Res on our runes where we're very like rune savvy, if you know what I mean. And even haste with Lemuray, there's ways to still get around that on longer maps like this. The haste saga, it's still really good, but since the fight doesn't happen immediately, you don't get those consecutive turns to attack like you do on some of those other maps. And because of the spacing, like she stays in spots like for too long. So Sephiroth will move ahead, she'll quicken him. Next thing you know, Sephiroth's like 7 squares away. She can't Kiraga in time. Like there's a bunch of things that just fall apart when you start using that team. So yeah, it's been a fun matchup though, and you are still seeing a ton of other elements too. These are just the top 10 units, but if you were to expand this, I mean, you're still seeing like other variations. Ravies is here. Like,
yeah, what's Ravies doing? And that's interesting.
Yeah, that was I think that was Salt City that was running her, where not everyone had Alphonse, so they ran Ravies instead, which is very cool because against evade unit, she's got that thief sub job, so she's just like stealing hearts on all those fire units. It's very interesting to see her into the fold.
Especially, I mean, I know that a lot of people reincarnated her just because the MR scrolls are a little bit more economical. So
absolutely,
that's really cool.
Yeah. So all right, we'll transition this now to top 25. See what kind of changes we get. Obviously, a fair amount more. Oh, I'm sorry, this is top 15. Let me get back to top 10 units for us. There we go. Definitely more purple. So yeah, top 25. Sephiroth still the king there.
Fire evade still second. We see a big uptick from Bradley though, and Alphonse jumping in there too. So that's it's good to see.
There's definitely more Bradley here, I think, in top 25 than top 10 on attack so far. That might change soon though. I think, yeah, I can't make any bold predictions, but
Bradley. I'm surprised we're not seeing more water there. Just kind of deal with all that fire.
Lightning is just too strong. The threat of lightning is so powerful that like water stands no chance. And I think water still has a tough time with dark, quite honestly. That I think despite how strong fire evade is, water doesn't beat enough other things than fire evade, which is kind of unfortunate. But
that's one thing that we've been seeing, at least currently, that I think it's probably going to remain that way until maybe Celis gets an upgrade and can kind of tank a little bit better in this meta.
Yeah, obviously loads of Sephiroth here on defense. It is interesting to see what else they pair him with. But there's still some color versatility here. I'm sure if I were to expand this to 15... Oh no, there's no wind at all. There is no wind at all in the top 15. That is very, very interesting.
Yeah, we're not really seeing much wind. There was maybe like one guild that we ran into that was running winds one time, but other than that, it's not out there.
No, interesting. It is interesting. All right, cool. We'll also pump up here to top 50, see how things kind of change a little more. I'm going to expect probably more of the same results, just a little more exaggerated, and that seems to be the case. Now we are seeing a little more wind here on attack, at least Flagbearer Glaciella. I think if I were to expand that, yeah, you'd probably see some more green in there. Obviously, Sephiroth is still the king of kings, but decreasing at a decreasing rate. So maybe some trending.
I think some people are starting to get their Alphonses and Bradleys online here.
Yep. I know I
to
love
kind of.
Alphonse for Seth because Alphonse has that no defense in peril above his health a certain amount. So even though Sephiroth like leads off with things like Hell's Gate and whatnot, if Alphonse can get healed back up to 100 or so, I think that still takes effect where Seth can't break his defense on Teleferic Fury. So yeah, really hard to kill Alphonse in that regard.
Yeah, so good with Resnick behind him to kind
Oh,
of cleanse the debuffs and.
Resnick's so good. Uh, and even with Alphonse, Resnick's great because she doesn't need to give him the physical barrier, which is like her best ability for the longest time, which actually is exceptional because it saves her a lot of TP. She would frequently run out of TP on that second fight because once you spam that physical barrier like twice, like you're out of TP by second fight. You can't cure anymore. So definitely a nice buff for her, kind of inadvertently. But yeah, all right, Dark still doing its thing here in top 50. I'm not surprised.
Yeah, I think when we get into these brackets, the convenience lineup of Dark is just too compelling.
Yep, absolutely. Well, and
Set it and forget it.
I was going to say you don't have to think much about the math of like accuracy versus evade because you get so much guaranteed hit with Sephiroth for some of what he has, and the element res. Not a lot of people can bypass that easily. Yeah, just it's just the dark and fire show here.
Yeah.
For a top 100, there's a lone flag bearer Glaciella here, and definitely even more so on defense in the top 100. That's so interesting. I mean, I'm not surprised, but it is interesting. It's cool to see some fire, dark variety though, outside of Sephiroth. I mean,
So
like,
for folks who are kind of in this 100 zone, if you're seeing this much fire, that definitely work on your Mirandas and get her online. She has been a pretty good counter to that at a cheap cost. So
you know what? I'm actually honestly very surprised. I think I saw a Sylvie in here, like a random Sylvie. I am surprised there's not like a little bit of light on the very bottom lines where with this much dark running around, you would, I mean, I'm not think, you can meta tune against that. You literally just run a Warrior of Light, like 90 dark res. You can run a Mashari with extra dark veil. You can run whatever you want and just meta tune to beat dark, and you could easily 6-star dark given how prevalent it is. I'm like kind of a little surprised you don't at least don't say that on attack. Defense, I get it. Even on
I think
attack, this is top 20 on attack. Top 20 units, not a single light unit that I can see.
that's like a far. I mean, when you think back to when we were first looking at this, when it first launched, how much Elena was on there and how much Cloud. So it seems like people have some new toys here at least.
Definitely, definitely. I'm telling you guys, get creative. Your Sakuras, your Machiris, your Warriors of Lights, they can do some stuff against Dark.
Yep,
Good stuff.
for sure.
All right. Well, that was essentially what I want to do for the meta look. I did want to take a very small segue though, where I wanted to look just briefly at both Roy and King Bradley here, just to kind of see what people were running them with and some relative success. There is this units section here where you can kind of poke through and see what people are pairing them with. Let me just filter some of my dates here properly. So these top, and I'll do top 50. I think 50 is a pretty good sample size. What am I looking at here? That can't be right. Number of teams? There's no way only 8 teams ran Ray Mustang. I guess that's it.
Yeah, not much. Not super popular, I guess.
Oh my god. I knew it was bad. Oh my god. Yeah. Oh, okay. Resuming. Yeah, so this did not go as intended. I know Bradley's look a lot better than this. Roy Mustang getting essentially no usage in Guild Wars. On attack, there's been only 8 teams using him yesterday. On attack defense, obviously, maybe not expecting him, but man, even the distribution of guilds. So that's what these second charts are. It's the these are the guild ranks 1 through 50, like how many Roys are being used, and there's some wide variety, but yeah, nothing in the top 10, and even relatively little throughout the rest of it. Roy is struggle bussing here.
I feel like he's a slow build target for folks that did pull him.
100%.
So, and
100%.
it seems like the people that did actually pull him is pretty few.
That's very interesting for Roy. I didn't expect it, but I'm not surprised now that you mentioned that. But we'll look here at King Bradley instead, and I know his metrics are way different than Roy's. Again, we'll do top 50 guilds here. Far more usage. You got 130 or 127 Bradleys on attack as of yesterday. Less than on defense, only 29, but that kind of makes sense. Not everyone's running him for walls and stuff. Um, if we look at the guild dispersion, who's using him on attack and defense, um, spoiler alert, the number one rank guild, that's Chocoboss, currently running him the most on attack, 9 attack teams, but even VIP here, we've thrown him into attack a couple times. Definitely less on defense, though. You're not seeing him built into walls, really, quite yet, but I don't know.
He has. I mean, at least from what I've seen, he is performing even better against Dark than I was expecting. So
Yep.
even without Dialdo to kind of front him, he's putting in some work.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And obviously, Queen Mashri does seem to be a staple consistently here of who he's used with, which kind of makes sense. You only have one magic user typically. But other than that, pretty even or close toss up between Oberon and Zazan. I'm shocked at the 38 Rugias. I didn't know 38 people pulled for Rugia in global. That's good
I
to
think
see.
Oberon and Queen Marcherie are probably the prime targets, just because each of them have an imperil on their limit burst. Obviously, Marcherie's is more potent, but you know, Oberon's isn't bad either.
Definitely. Well, and I know Oberon's big thing too is the Eliphacaris vision card, which is their unit res. Outside of the unit res, there's really nothing else for anybody. It's just pierce attacks. So you might as well have Oberon in there to kind of get the benefit of that. I know Bradley has some pierce attacks, but that's not really where his strength seems to be. All right. Well, that concludes what we wanted to do for the War Room. Just kind of looking at some meta stats and whatnot. We are at now the Leonis Spy Report, where we look ahead to some of the JP side of things. Namely, today we're going to just talk kind of briefly about Faris and then the Syldra, Esper, and Vision card. I don't know how much you might have seen about Faris. Did you do a, I'm sure you might be looking into a future video yet, but I know we just got some news on her. What do you think so far?
Yeah, so I haven't gotten to my future look on her yet. I'm still working on Raf right now, actually. So I'm a couple units behind, but I'll get to her soon. But yeah, so I've looked a bit at Ferris. I've done some mock building. I try to do that with all kind of the latest units. But I know that some people have been kind of trashing on her a little bit. Maybe don't think that she's all that great. Personally, I don't see that. I think that she's going to be pretty solid. I think where people maybe are kind of underestimating her is that she's not kind of that carry kind of super high damage kind of unit like a Bradley or even like a Sephiroth. Like she doesn't have breaks or imperils to kind of really throw that damage into the next level. So when you are kind of team building, you do need to kind of think about that and pair her with a unit that can kind of bring that. I think that what she does bring is maybe some role compression for your team, in that she's a little bit more of a supportive damage dealer. And when I say she's not a carry damage dealer, it's not like her damage is trash. Like she has good modifiers, she has really good attack values, and good skills in general. But it's just the lack of imperils and things that can really kind of take it to the next level. But in lieu of that, she does have some skills which kind of have some supportive aspects, like some healing and some buffing. They don't actually show them on World of Calc, unfortunately, because it's kind of a new mechanic for the game. But yeah, I am looking forward to that. I think that I think she's going to work really really well with Celis. Actually, I think they're going to complement each other very nicely.
It's interesting you say that. I almost thought she could be a replacement for Celis, where I don't think she's a tank. She's definitely more of a brawler, a damage dealer, not explosive, as you sort of alluded to, where, she does have more of that, like, bulkiness between what she has for AoE res and the protect and shell. That being said, though, those are kind of easily dispellable nowadays, so it's not necessarily a strong point for her, and it's unfortunate that some of her buffs are tied to it, but yeah, you get 20 res if she's got a 20 AoE res on Protector Shell, another 30 when her HP is above 70%. She's got AoE res on her master ability of 10, so she's pretty high up there, and she's got 10 healing power too, so she does have kind of that, like, self-sustain because that healing power and what you can do to heal up that health pool. But yeah, most of her abilities are damage dealing. I really just think it's maybe that, like, taunting blade access on Paladin, where they got that reduction in AP, that if you are trying to maybe, like, sub out that source of hate, Celeste does seem to still be the best to do that all around. And I know she's getting some good upgrades here for Final Fantasy VI, but I know this is like just a kind of all around different type of character. and just different kind of utility. Where Celeste is more of like a true soak damage tank, and then kind of utility driven tank, where she has like big AOE res down. This is obviously very different. So I think people are still trying to figure out exactly how to use her. But I don't think she's bad. She definitely seems worthy of the 100 cost.
I've seen other people in JP trying to use her as a tank, and she really doesn't hold up quite as well as you would like. Just because like her main source of survivability is that protect shell, which more and more units are. It's not as common as like a barrier break, but more and more units are able to dispel that.
Right.
I think that you really want to rely on the area resistance and then have somebody else that's actually fronting the tank, whether you sort of mix her into ice, like with a 140 snow, who JP should be seeing very soon, or you go towards Celis and kind of leverage some of the upgrades that she got. I do like the synergy with Celis though, because of the like you said, the area resist break that she brings. So if you combo that, like maybe you bring in an Astrius or who has the defense break, and then you can start seeing some really nice damage, I think, coming out of Faris. She does on her limit burst have basically exactly what Valentine's Ildira has with the AoE CT down and then CT up for herself. It's not as quite of a large area of effect, but still a hugely powerful skill if you can line it up.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, either way, she seems well rounded enough that you could throw her in a variety of teams. Yeah, to your point, Celeste does have some great upgrades. The two of them together, can kind of move in synergy. I would wonder if Celeste then kind of does her Cura and is the pseudo heal if you throw an Astrius in there, if you know what I mean. And not even mentioning Perrine, who I still think is like de facto the best water unit overall. But shoot, even I know Miranda has some like Cura potential, and either way, good overall addition. I think she feels like a water unit. Maybe that's not a good thing though, because water seem to fizzle. So maybe water needs something different.
Water seems to get some of these experimental mechanics, like obviously Celis got Runic,
Yeah.
and now Faris is kind of getting these 2-in-1 combo skills.
Yep.
Where like I said, some of her attacks, and one of her attacks is actually an AOE heal, which that I think maybe comboed with a tank could be nice, and get off a little bit of healing there in the mid fight.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Absolutely, and even better than her though is the Syldra Esper and Vision card, which has come out here. And so the Syldra Vision card we'll look at first. This is a, number one, probably the most icons you've put on a Vision card. There is a numerous amount of characters here. A
It's
lot of
almost completely full.
yeah, and a lot of like ones that stand out. Like, yep, good unit, good unit, good unit. Good. Like overall, it's got the 12 spirit, which nowadays doesn't mean as much. The 30 crit rate is a sizable amount of crit rate, and the 35 slash res pen is a high amount, but there are obviously many cards now that do offer that, and many characters which innately have that. That being said, if you're looking at the characters on here, they're all characters who greatly benefit from that in a getting an alternative card in here instead of having to rely on their mono element card. But yeah, a lot of good elements here stacked.
It seems to me that Gumi is maybe propping up this red mage group a bit. The number of cards is starting to grow for that particular weapon group, which otherwise known as sword 1 or sword A. And actually a few units coming into, like with Howlett and Reagan there, and now Faris. So maybe that's something that could have some nice synergy there in the future, kind of bridging together some of these different red mage units.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know this is one of those classes where I've got like some slight high hopes. We talk about like how do you make a team of 3 that are always comprised of like the things on the cards. And I know this class is a little limited for what they offer for tankable units, where I know Charlotte stands out as one. I know Dwayne kind of now more recently stands out as the other. But outside of those two, there really aren't many characters that you can throw in there. But we are getting like tankier characters, which Agrius is kind of power creep, but I know she kind of falls under that. But either way, like I think these are good characters by and large, so it's nice to maybe get some cross element synergies that you couldn't previously.
And I mean, all it takes is one new unit to change the picture. Like with the Mace group, with Raf coming in and kind of fronting that over in JP not that long ago, that completely changes the complexion of that particular weapon group. So
Absolutely.
There's definitely, like you said, there's some big promise here, I think, with some of the units you see here. So
Yeah,
we'll see what happens in the weeks to come.
totally. And then I know Syldra is the new Esper. I know you had very high hopes for her to be a water Esper that we have not gotten in like years at this point.
Yeah, somehow like Gumi is just being a stickler for the lore on particular Esper, and then really just wants it to be wins, like
Yep.
I guess in the game. But the Esper itself is very kind of neutral. I mean, when you look at the board anyway, and what it brings,
Yeah.
it's very kind of it's another slash and accuracy Esper, which always nice to have another one.
Yep.
So
Yep.
yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
No, totally right. Particularly because it's a wind Esper, where sometimes you get these Espers that are a certain element, and they don't go for the element attack; they go for something different. I know, like Death Machine's kind of another one that it's not fire attack up; it's slash attack up. Fenrir is kind of the same, where it's not ice attack; it's slash attack. So this kind of falls in that same one, where not only do you get that slash attack, but you also get its regular attack percentage. You also get an alternative node here, though, where they have more slash attack on the bottom, kind of like Fenrir, as we mentioned. The accuracy obviously nice. The slash res definitely more and more common. I feel like on many of these espers, where I didn't really notice slash res a lot previously, but this seems to be obviously more of a staple. And it's kind of nice that although it's got the 10% innate strength to Earth, you actually add a little bit here innately with that extra 8% too. So this Esper, 17 agility, love to see it. Overall, big thumbs up. Just not water.
Yeah, it does have the Berserk resist on there too, which is rare too.
I was thinking of throwing it right because Berserk obviously